Hello there, people of the internet. How's everyone doing today? I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking. So today we're going to talk about some of the small arms, or the primary small arms that the United States was using in its previous generation of arms development. Now I say previous generation because these arms that we'll be discussing encumber several generations in terms of time periods. So I'm just going to go ahead and say the previous generation of US arms. Now that being said, some of these are not what they're going to be representing. And I think this right here is a very good example of what I mean by that. If you guys have not seen my makeshift sight video, go watch that before you watch this, because if you haven't seen that, then this is going to really make you cringe. This right here is my Volunteer Enterprise Thompson lookalike. This is a Commando Mark III chambered in 45 ACP, and yes, the front sight is just a hose clamp with the screw sticking out of it. I recommend you guys go check out the video where I showed this thing off. But this video is not about this, lookalike. We're going to talk about the actual development behind the Thompson submachine gun and its involvement in the United States history. Now, originally, whenever the Thompson submachine gun was made, it was made under the assumption that two different types of metal have different friction coefficients whenever they are put under different varying levels of pressure. This idea was known as the locking system that came from this idea began to become known as the Blish-Lock system. Its idea was to take a piece of brass fitting locking material and essentially have it rub against steel, in the idea that the brass would stay stuck to the steel just through friction until the pressures in the chamber have dropped to the point to where the brass is no longer held to the steel with friction. Now, this idea later on in time had been proven to be non-existent. It wasn't true. The idea that different metals have different levels of friction based off of pressure just is not something that was a fact. However, the Blish-Lock system, because it was a technically delayed blowback system, worked well enough in the original Thompsons to make them function reliably and safely. Now, a lot of people think the Thompson submachine gun is a World War II era gun, but its original development was actually around World War I. These were intended to be used as trench sweepers to go through enemy trenches. With a bolt-action rifle is not very efficient, but if you go in with a submachine gun, then it is considerably more effective. However, these things, although they did see a little bit of use towards the very end of the war, they didn't see anything significant simply because it took a while to develop them and the war was over before these were actually done. Now, come the Second World War, the United States did not have any other alternatives to submachine guns, at least at the very start. This right here was all they had. The Thompson submachine gun was extremely expensive and time-consuming to make. They worked on different variables to try and make it easier to manufacture, cheaper to manufacture, take less time to manufacture, etc., etc. They ended up just chucking out the idea of the Blish-Lock system, and they replaced it with just a straight blowback design. This became the Thompson M1A1 military model that we all know. They got rid of the cooling fans, they got rid of the fancy front sight with the muzzle compensator, they simplified the receiver. A lot of stuff was done to the Thompson submachine gun to go ahead and make it much easier to manufacture. And it worked very well, but it was still quite on the expensive side until they ended up adopting the M3 grease gun, which is just an all stamped sheet metal, very controllable 45 caliber machine gun or submachine gun. As a matter of fact, this Thompson clone lookalike takes grease gun magazines. Anyone who's tried loading a grease gun mag without the tool knows that once you get to like 15 rounds, it's pretty much impossible. You need a loading tool to load these things. Now, the British also used the Thompson submachine gun in vast numbers during the Second World War simply because they had no other alternatives or anywhere to turn to. This was before their Sten was being, now that I'm thinking about it, I ought to get myself a Sten lookalike to go ahead and make videos on. I think that'd be really cool. Stay tuned for that. But the Thompson was the only submachine gun that they could go to reliably. The British were very, they did not like the idea of having a submachine gun. They considered it a gangster gun, and they did not want it in their arsenal until, of course, they were going up against the Germans who had submachine guns, and the British were not doing so well. Now then, this one right here, this Thompson clone lookalike is made to somewhat resemble the wartime model of the Thompson submachine gun, other than the fact that the lower receiver is not even close to what the lower receiver on a Thompson submachine gun would actually look like. And they also included what would be considered the cooling fans, although on this they're just plastic and made to look cool. I have seen on these both standard wartime front sights, just the little loop around with a pole, and I've also seen them with the extended muzzle flash front sights on them. So I'm not entirely sure what they're trying to mimic there, but it's very clear that they're going for some sort of Thompson look-alike. Alright, well, that was an extraordinarily brief history on the Thompson submachine gun. I'm going to go ahead and lob a couple rounds downrange. Ammo's expensive and hard to find. 45 ACP is no exception. So I've only got 5 rounds in this mag, and after I fire this thing, I'm not going to want to fire more than 5 rounds. This is a cool little wall hanger, but for the most part, I don't take it out simply because it is completely unreliable. These things are jamming machines. Not the Thompson, but the Volunteer Enterprise lookalikes. These things do not work at all. They're just inexpensive little lookalikes, which is why I had no problems throwing my little front sight doohickey on this thing. Alright, we're just going to fire some ball ammunition. I will also point out that the magazine for this thing is significantly worn out. This grease gun mag has seen better days. It's worn out to the point that if I shake it a bit, it just comes right out. Normally you'd have to press your magazine release right here to get that to happen, but not in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up. Like I said, we got 5 rounds, and we're going to see if she works. Sounds like we got a barking dog in the background. Please do try to ignore that. All right, let's lob some lead. Oh, look at that. First malfunction 2 rounds in. Get out of there, you. And for some reason, that one didn't fire. Oh, I figured out why it didn't fire. It didn't chamber. Let me see if this thing works better if I hold the magazine firmly in place. Okay, well, she does seem to work better, so I am going to go to the assumption that the magazine is probably what makes this thing not function so reliably. However, after only 3 rounds, that is an inconclusive test. Alright, exasperatingly short history on the Thompson submachine gun. There's a lot that I didn't cover. I know I didn't cover it, but I don't want these videos to be several hours long, okay? So let's go ahead and move on. I bet you guys know what this is. I haven't made a video on this rifle yet, and there's a reason for that. I'm not going to actually tell you guys the reason for that, but there's a reason for that. Later on down the road, whenever I actually make a video about this, you'll understand the reason for that. The strap I have on this thing is literally just a reproduction bandolier that I cut and threw on it. I like doing this with my rifles. It's just something I do. I don't really understand why. After I had done it with my Turkish Mauser, I got a bandolier for my Turkish Mauser and I did that to it, and I was like, this is actually really cool because I can like stuff ammo into the actual bandolier itself. it's just neat. But anyway, this right here is a 1952 production M1 Garand. It does have the upgraded gas system in it, so nobody complain about that, will ya? This right here is a CMP refurbishment, and I got it for an extraordinarily good price, especially considering how expensive M1 Garands are getting, and just how bad it is to get one if you're not getting it through the CMP program. I'm not going to tell you guys just how cheaply I got this rifle, because it would make many of you foam at the mouth with envy. Anyway, where are we going to begin with this story? This was, of course, developed by a Mr. Garand. It was developed in the mid-1930s, and it was intended to replace the United States bolt-action rifle. The United States was using several bolt-action rifles at the time, but they wanted a semi-automatic standard infantry rifle, as a lot of countries were beginning to see would be the go-to rifle. All other countries were also working on semi-auto rifles to replace their, not necessarily obsolete at the time, but their obsolescent bolt-action rifles. The idea of equipping a mass military force with semi-autos versus bolt-actions was a concept that made the people in charge of logistics concerned, because they were concerned that their soldiers were going to be wasting a lot of ammunition. However, in practice, whenever they saw these and how effective they were on the battlefield, they very, very quickly changed their mind onto whether or not they should go about doing this. Now, the Americans were not the first to do this. As a matter of fact, semi-auto self-loading rifles were around way before World War II was even a thing, way before the Garand was even a thing. But the United States was the first to equip their standard infantry units with semi-auto self-loading rifles to the extent that any military has. These things served very, very well. However, their weak point is in fact the gas operating system. Whenever the United States was using the M1 Garands, they actually downloaded their 30-06 to make it not quite as powerful as a 30-06 normally would be. This right here put a lot less strain on the gas operating system. Nowadays, you can swap out your gas system. It's very, very easy. And you throw in a new one, and the one I have is an adjustable one, so it makes it much simpler to make sure that you don't destroy your gas system. But after the Second World War, they looked into magazine-fed M1 Garands. They wanted to replace the in-block clip with an external magazine system. It worked all right, but it wasn't quite what they were looking for. The time and effort that went into converting an M1 Garand to taking external magazines simply was not worth it, especially because they weren't nearly as reliable as they would like them to be. As time progressed, eventually they ended up adopting the same exact system in a new rifle, which became the M14, but that's not really what this story is about. I guess the M14 would be the previous generation, but it wasn't a very long-serving rifle. The M14 was quickly replaced by the M16. Not to say that the M14 is not a fantastic rifle. Personally, I think it's, you know, the bee's knees, but the M16 did end up replacing the M14 fairly quickly. Anyway, during the Second World War, I just want to point out that all the enemy forces that were going up against this rifle very quickly realized that self-loaders were absolutely the way to go. So the Germans tried making their own self-loaders, the Japanese tried making their own self-loaders. As a matter of fact, the Japanese tried copying the M1 Garand itself. But to try and develop a whole new rifle and issue it to all of your soldiers in the middle of a war that you're currently losing is not something that can be done very easily, or very quickly, or very effectively, or very cost efficiently. So nothing was made to the point to where they replaced all their bolt-action rifles. Definitely not to the scale to which the United States had issued M1 Garands. I'm sure somebody's going to yell at me at some point for saying M1 Garand instead of M1 Grand. The guy's name was Garand, but the military pronunciation was Grand. So I don't care how you decide to pronounce it. I'm going to pronounce it Garand because that's the guy's name. Now, as I said before, ammunition is significantly expensive. I do not have a lot of 30-06, and by that I mean I don't even have enough to fill up a full clip of ammunition. So I've got 6 rounds of 30-06 crammed into this clip. I've got a couple of tracer rounds and a couple of soft points. Now, like I said, this right here does have the upgraded gas system in it. The tracer rounds are lower pressure, so we're going to see if they cycle. But the soft point rounds are modern commercial ammunition, so you don't want to fire these out of a rifle that does not have the upgraded gas system in it. Now, I do have this gas system nice and wide open simply because I am firing soft tip heavier ammunition. So honestly, I don't think it's going to cycle reliably. I might have to close up the gas system a little bit, but we're going to find out. Now, when loading these rifles, unless you're using an M1 Garand or a clip that is significantly worn out, it's not going to just slam itself shut. As a matter of fact, there's a little guide rail back here on the charging handle, I guess you'd call it, where it actually holds the system in place while you load it in. However, I will never not holding M1 Garand open while I'm loading it. Well, this ammunition has definitely seen better days. This stuff has been just kind of sitting stored for quite some time, and now we're gonna fire it. If it even fires, I don't even know if this stuff is gonna shoot. Now, I do not know if my Garand is zeroed, so that will be interesting to see. I'm fairly certain that we're gonna be pretty close. I mean, we're on in the rear, so it's mostly gonna be elevation. We're gonna see where she's hitting at. Let's go ahead and see if this round fires. Oh, she fired. Man, this is a beautiful gun. I love shooting this thing, but unfortunately, I got this thing at the very start of 2020, and like ammunition costs have gone absolutely through the roof, and I'm not able to shoot this thing nearly as often as I'd like. But I do have a couple of rounds left, so let's go ahead and lob them. Whoosh. I can feel how slow this thing is operating. I definitely have the gas system a little on the light side. This thing is not operating as fast as it normally would, so I would not be surprised if we had any malfunction. I got a few more rounds though. I pulled that one a little left. Well, that was pretty cool. Do you guys like that ping? Now, I do not know if the tracer rounds I used were corrosive or not, so I am going to go ahead and clean this rifle later down the road. And by later down the road, I mean probably this evening whenever I'm getting drunk. I'm trying to cram the clip into this thing so I can get a more audible ping for you guys, because you can't really hear it all that well whenever you're firing. I'm not sure how it came up on camera, but here. There you go. Well, that was a nice fun time. I love firing this thing. I definitely love firing this thing. But if you look at the back of the receiver, right here, there's this little notch that actually holds the charging handle and bolt open. I've noticed that whenever I'm loading my gun, if I'm holding it up by the charging handle and I load it in, normally, as I said, if your firearm or something is wore out, it will just slam itself home. But I couldn't get mine to do that. There's occasions where it does that if I'm using a worn out clip or something, but for the most part, it does lock itself pretty firmly into that little notch. All right, next up, we're gonna be talking about the 1911. This is not a 1911. Unfortunately, 2020 has been a very, very, very rough year for not just me, but a lot of people. And I did have to get rid of my Rock Island Armory 1911. It is a shame, yes, I know. But the beauty about these Rock Island Armory 1911s is I can always get one at a later point in time whenever panic prices go down and whenever things are better, and maybe I can afford to actually fire the thing. So this right here is just representing the 1911. This right here is a 1911 clone. This is a Star Model BM chambered in 9mm. Nothing real special about it. A few differences between this thing and the 1911. It is chambered in 9mm, of course. The trigger on it is of a pivoting design versus the 1911 straight pullback trigger. And the extractor is on the outside of the gun versus the 1911, which has the extractor on the inside of the gun. This right here does make it much easier to swap the extractor if you end up breaking yours for some reason. Alright, this video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to do a very quick, rough, brief history of the 1911. Smokeless powder had become a thing, and the United States wanted to replace its .45 caliber revolvers. Very nice revolvers, but they wanted to replace them. They wanted to adopt a self-loading handgun. So the 1911 was just one of the options that were on the table, but it was by far the best out of its competitors. The 1911 actually started life in, well, it began developments in the late 1800s. I think it started 1899. The first real iterations of the 1911 were made in the 1900s. During this time of its development, it was only known as the Colt automatic pistol. They made both hammer models and quote-unquote hammerless models, which just had a shrouded hammer inside of them. Eventually, it hit military trials and was accepted in, of course, the year 1911. It saw use in the First World War. They figured out some issues that were wrong with it. They went ahead and made some tweaks, made some minor adjustments. They gave it a much larger beaver tail, a different hammer profile. They gave it better sights, better grip, basically things to make it handle a bit better and make it a bit safer. After that, the 1911 saw use in the Second World War, Korea, it saw use in Vietnam, it saw use pretty much all the way. Actually, it still sees use today in small amounts, but it saw mainstream military use up until the adoption of the M9 Beretta pistol. Even after that, because it was so well liked and so well known by a lot of other individuals, some of them just chose to continue to use it in the military. Now, that was as monumentally brief of a history as I could give. The 1911 is a very, very, very simple design. It uses a tilting barrel lock breech system, which is what they use to delay the actual cycling of the weapon until the chamber pressures in the barrel have died down to a point to where the firearm could cycle without destroying itself or without the round blowing out the back of the barrel. Okay, now I think I'm going to go ahead, lob some lead down range. I'm about to flex on you guys. I'm going to fire a full magazine of 9mm ammunition. This right here is just, you know, cheapo steel case ammunition, but for some reason that seems to be the desired go-to ammo right now. I don't know why, but they're wanting the same price for cheap steel case ammunition that they're wanting for better quality brass case ammunition. So, hey, it is what it is. All right. Behold my flex. Now, this 1911 clone, the Star BM, doesn't function very well with brass case ammo, so I actually prefer shooting steel case out of it, which kind of sucks, because I can find brass more readily available than I can find steel nowadays, with the panic and whatnot going on in the United States right now. So, well, my target is kind of slouching a bit, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to hit it from here. I can hit that just fine. Well, I know I said I could hit it just fine, but it's slowly moving progressively downward to the point to where it's getting harder and harder to hit. All right, now I'm about to flex even more. I'm going to go ahead and load up a second mag of 9mm ammunition and lob it downrange. I'm hitting the crap that is underneath the steel target. Man, I've got probably about 4 inches of steel target down there to try and hit at 50 yards, and it's just simply not happening. Let me see if I can manage to nab a corner. There we go. Okay. Got it. Okay. Oh, I have way too much fun out here. Yeah, I don't know if you guys can actually see that steel target down there anymore, but the crap that I have that holds it up has been shot to the point to where it's much lighter than it used to be. Actually, that thing is the bottom to a washing machine. It's like the motor that spins around the washing machine, and it is now shot to probably about 1/3 of its mass. So it's no longer holding up the target as well. I gotta find something else nice and heavy. So already I only have like half my target showing, and combine that with the fact that it's slouching at about, oh, I don't know, 45-degree angle at this point. It's kind of hard to hit. All right, well, I think that I covered the history of these firearms at least halfway decently. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. If you like this kind of stuff, do me a solid and subscribe to the channel, because as you can see from the card down there, I do this kind of stuff all the time. If you like the video, do me a solid and actually like the video. YouTube's anti-gun right now. Every like, every subscription, every share definitely helps out the channel. Check out the description down below. You're going to find a link to Patreon, Discord, social medias, whatever else I have down there that I'm forgetting about right now. You might find yourself some cool stuff down there. I think I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know, I want to make another video, but I'm not entirely certain what video I want to make. So I'm going to go look through my arsenal, see if I can come up with any ideas, because it's still pretty early, I'm having fun, but ammo's expensive. So I'm not shooting nearly as much as I'd like to. I was conserving ammo back in the day, but man, I've really got to conserve ammo now. Anyway, I'm gonna go browse my arsenal. You guys go off. Have a fantastic day. Thanks for watching, and hey, if you have any ideas on what you want to see, do me a favor and let me know. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garrett. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.